Hello, everybody. How's it going? I shot this video last night and screwed up. And when I took it off the camera to put it onto the computer, I cut and pasted instead of copied. And then the file got corrupted halfway through. Anyway, let's try again. We're going to talk about Trump a little and brainwashing quite a bit more. With the Trump thing, I find it amazing and even incomprehensible to talk to people and they're up in arms about Trump and this term or whatever, and going on about him screwing around with government and what this and that, even though they know the government rips us off and they know that the government's been ripping us off, but somehow they want somebody from within the government to be that person who fixes the government, and it's not possible. In order to get into politics, you need a lot of money, like a real ton of money. And so poor politicians go to super rich people whom you don't know. You never see their faces. They stay hidden. And they send these politicians out to be their faces and do their bidding. And you know that. And then you don't trust Trump because he's already rich. Okay, well, the motivations of your typical politician, they go in poor and they come out rich. The motivation was obviously to enrich themselves, right? And they did that by listening to some millionaire, billionaire, whatever, who doesn't even have the balls to show us his face in most cases. You know, Soros, Bill Gates, yeah, they show us their face, but they're not showing us their face like running for politics themselves. They have all these minions do it. And then you can get mad at the minions, but you don't get mad at them, right? And see, they have bosses as well that do the exact same thing, right? The Rothschild family let Soros and Bill Gates and these types of people be super rich, and they do their bidding, and they're the fall guy. If shit goes down, it's them that goes down, not the Rothschilds. They didn't. Their faces were never seen. Nobody knew that they were anything to do with it. They can claim innocence, right? And they've done that more and more over the last 100 years or so, because things are getting more and more transparent. So they've been pulling themselves away and putting out proxy people. Anyhow, so you know that's all going on, but you're still mad that Trump's going to be fixing it because Trump and Elon Musk are both rich. Well, no one else could do it. You don't have the money to do it without them backers. And those backers aren't going to back you unless you do what they say. So nobody could ever do what Trump is doing because they're not their own man. He's his own man. Now, he's got an ego problem, probably. Yeah. But I think, personally, I think that his ego He's had some screw ups in his lifetime. He's made some money, made it back. He lost some money, made it back, lost it again. Um, Ups and downs. And, history's going to remember him in some aspect. But now he can get history to remember him as the guy who fixed America, brought it back to the people. And I think that's what his ego is. That's what his goal is. It might not come from the righteous place that you want it to. A piece of it does. But a bigger piece of it is to do with ego. That's just it. But it's to your benefit. The next thing that really, really irks me is that we had 8 years of Obama. They were pretty rocky. And then we went into 4 years of Trump, and it was great. And they said, oh, well, that was all because of Obama. And then we go into 4 years of Biden, and it was horrible. And they said, oh, well, that was because of Trump. Now we're back into Trump. We've been 2 months, and they're like, oh, the price of eggs. What? The fuck? Like, that doesn't even compute. How can you claim everything for these other presidents, claim Trump's whole first term, and then for Obama, and then blame Biden's horrible term on Trump, and then we come back into Trump's new term, and within the first 3 weeks, you were bitching about the price of eggs. Like he could fucking immediately fix anything. Most government take the 4 years to fix anything. And he's already done a lot of stuff. Let's just leave it at that. So why not just take a deep breath, calm down, and give the man a year? Just shut the fuck up. Watch him. Obviously, you got to see what he's doing. Make sure that he's not screwing up major. But get off his back. If you give a man some rope, enough rope, he can hang himself, right? That's the old adage. And so give him the rope. If he's this horrible Hitler dictator, all this shit, he's going to hang himself. And then we'll fix it. Right? But what we were doing was broken. 100%. Right? There's entire generations of people who've never voted in their lives. Because they see through the politics enough that they know it's pointless. You're voting for two different heads of the same snake. So there's no point in voting because it's all just for show. Because they all go back to Davos to get their marching orders, whether they're on the right or the left, it doesn't matter. They all, NDP, all of them, they go there, they get their money and their marching orders, and then they come back here and implicate them together, in tangent, together. They worked together. See, the way they work it is they'll take, and the liberals will come in and they'll push progressive things that are supposed to be great for you. Oh, more welfare. Oh, better healthcare. Oh, more free this and more free that. And you shouldn't say this and you shouldn't say that. And let's change this word and change that word. And repent for history that we had no part of. And just all these stupid things that they come up with. So they push and push and push and push all these retarded policies. And everybody gets fed up at a certain point. So then the conservatives come in, and traditionally, what their job is to do is to just not really change any policies. Maybe balance the books a little better and tighten things up so that people can live a little better over a couple years, but mostly just get people associated to the new normal and get them all more just on the same page, and that normal to become normal. And then the liberals will come back in and start pushing again, right? And that's what they've done throughout my whole lifetime, and then before anything that I've looked at. And like way back, you all the way to like Woodrow Wilson. And before that, but they were defeated by Andrew Jackson. And then his assassination attempt, like Trump's, they failed. But it's gun jammed. So he threw that gun down. He grabbed another gun, and it jammed. Like God was working for the people then, and so the old guy Andrew Jackson, he was a general, so he had by that time gotten up to the guy, and he took his cane and twacked him in the head and knocked him out, and but he was arrested, whatever. And then his vice president and the Rothschild representative, who was a Rockefeller, had like an old Western shootout where they stood back to back, took 10 paces, turned around and shoot each other, and the vice president killed him. And then they'd shut down the national bank, what they called it at the time. It was going to be the third national bank, and they stopped that, and they had America printing their own money and doing great. And then Woodrow Wilson came in and went to Jekyll Island, and I'm pretty sure that was the Treaty of Jekyll Island, and he signed over to the Federal Reserve and let them start making the money. And that was when they came back in and got their hold back on. They kept that hold till Lincoln, and then Lincoln was quoted in saying, "I have two great enemies, the Southern enemy at my face and the bankers at my back. And the bankers are the worst ones." And so then what they were doing was they were lending both sides money, but they were giving Lincoln exorbitant interest rates and this and that. So Lincoln got into the books, read up on it, said, "We're supposed to be printing our own money." And he started to make greenbacks. Excuse me. And he was immediately assassinated. And then JFK came around. And so JFK did the same things, and he actually signed whatever it was, a declaration of some sort, that America was going to start printing their own money, and he was trying to get it to push through Congress or whatever it was that he had to do, get the paperwork rolling, and he was assassinated within 3 months of signing that bill. So we've had the same enemy forever, right? Because you can go before that in history and find that same enemy all throughout England, and you can actually trace them back to the Bible and keep tracing them back to Edom. And that's who they are. They're Edomites. And they call themselves Jews, but they are not. They are the synagogue of Satan. That's Jesus's quote. Jesus was on the earth. He's killed. All of his disciples were killed. And the temple was burned and totally destroyed. So Judaism was killed. And Jesus told us they were false Jews. But the religion goes on. Do you think they just killed off the saints and said, oh, good, we're done. Go home. Time for bed. No. No, they had to rewrite Judaism and recreate it and mold it into the Judaism we have today, because you couldn't go to the temple anymore. It's gone. You can't sacrifice at the temple anymore. It's gone. You can't confide in the Levites anymore. They're gone. The whole thing's gone. You can't be Jewish. God left that religion, so he destroyed it. They rebuilt it as much as the Catholics are Christian, right? So it's not like Catholics are all bad. They're just deceived. Same with the Jews. Just because they're Edomites in blood doesn't mean that they're bad. And just because they're Jews in religion doesn't mean that they're bad and that they know all this information. They don't. The average Jewish person has no fucking idea. They don't read the books. They got the Torah or whatever. And it's totally just blasphemous shit. Well, no, it's not. Sorry. It's just a compilation of a bunch of things thrown together. And it is blasphemous. And just like the Catholics are. Like, they got little sculptures of the Virgin Mary and stuff that they keep in their pockets and carry around. All this stuff. All this idol worship. They got more idols than the pagans did back in the day. Like, it's clearly idol worship. And they're told never to pray to Jesus and God. Jesus is busy. God is busy. You can't bug him. Go to your priest or your cardinal or the Pope or the Virgin Mary or one of the saints, but you never go to Jesus. See, and that's not Christianity. Jesus and God are who we go to. The Trinity, right? So it's just not Christianity. Or, sorry, it's not Christianity. It's the Catholic religion, something else. And the same goes for Judaism. So I don't know, got way off of the Trump thing, but I think it's important that you know who your enemy really is, and what they've done over the years and stuff like that. And, I've said this till I was blue in the face, but I'll say it again anyways. See, the false Jew owned white slaves just before the slave trade started with the Africans. They had all these white slaves, and they did was they, you got to think, these people are really uneducated people. So, and they see their master as really highly educated, and and they're just like the serfs or whatever, peasants and this and that, right? So So what they did was they told those slaves that it was time to evolve into uh, a greater stance in the world, and that they could come closer to being equal to the people of God if they owned slaves themselves. That in order to become civilized, you had to have slaves. So they bought up a bunch of farms and a bunch of ships and a bunch of auction houses. And then they put the farms in the care of the white slaves and told them, you're going to be the master of this farm. You can run it, and we're going to give you a bunch of slaves, and you run all those slaves and work them, and you're going to become more civilized because of it. You know, your lifestyle will be that of a civilized man. You won't have to be the dirty worker and all this stuff. And then, like I said, they owned all the ships, and you can just look that up. And that's all in record, right, with the taxes and stuff, because they had to pay for those. And then they owned all the auction houses. And again, you can just look that all up and see what they would do is like the auction house would also be a farm. And Buddy would have, say, 100 slaves working on this farm. And the tax man would come in and take a head count and want to tax them on each slave. And he'd say, no, these are temporary ownership. They're only here until auction day. I don't own any of these slaves. And so they would have the benefits of constant slaves without ever paying the tax on those slaves. And then could say that they didn't own slaves because technically they didn't own them. They just owned the farm that they were owned by, and they owned the auction house and happened to be holding them for maybe 2 months at a time or a month or whatever, depending on when they came in and when the auctions were. It worked out a wonderful scam. And then they get the two slave classes fighting each other over who's more oppressed and who had it worse and this and that. Ridiculous. We're fooled, right? You're brainwashed. You're brainwashed into believing all this stuff right from a child, the littlest little tiny child. I was lucky as a kid because my parents would have these big house parties, and I'd be home, maybe 6, 7 years old, 8 years old. It went on for a few years. And so throughout the day, when they would all just kind of be having a couple of drinks and everyone was eating and this and that, obviously I was just in the mix and no problem. And I'd play music, mix drinks, whatever, with my uncles and stuff like that, right? And then later in the night, when everybody was drunk, I'd be the sober one. So if like Buddy and his wife were fighting and wrecking the party, I'd get rid of them or whatever. And if I found people cheating on their spouses or whatever here or there or whatever, I would break that shit up too. And my parents would keep putting me to bed, and my aunts would keep putting me to bed. My uncles would all let me up. My old man didn't really pay much attention, and but my uncles would all keep me up and hide me from my moms and shit like that, and let me play music and mix their drinks for them and cater and be the host. Anyways, and then everybody would crash, And usually around like midnight or so, most people would kind of fizzle out, and I'd sit up with Randy 5, 6 in the morning, and we would talk about everything. He would just open up. He was loaded, so he wouldn't even remember half those conversations, I'm sure, but he remembered bits and pieces, obviously, because he'd talk about it the next day and stuff like that. But um, we'd talk about his work and his kids and his wife and his problems and his mortgages and politics, government, just whatever he wanted, whatever was on his mind. I'd be his bartender, his therapist, whatever. We'd just shoot the shit. And, that's kind of how I grew up. And because of that, I knew politics were a fucking scam when I was a little tiny kid. And all growing up, I just knew it was a scam. And there's a ton of people like me who've had different ways that they learned that young, or happened to see it, and then just said, no, never going to vote. Never voting, you think, is a big problem, right? And it kind of is, because at least if those people who don't vote voted every time, we might have ended up with more of the conservative lows instead of the liberal highs. But whatever. Again, I don't think it made much difference in the long run. And, because even when conservatives were in, if the plan was to start a new war or whatever, then they would go along. When it's time to put the gas on, it's time to put the gas on. It doesn't matter who's in power. It's just usually the liberals do that. And they're playing good cop, bad cop, right? So they need to keep that conservative ace in the hole where they got the good cop, Anyhow. So I don't know if that is what led to me being blessed in another way, or if that was just the other way. It's just a blessing from God. But I'm also dyslexic, is what they say. And what that is, there's a bunch of symptoms of it where I do tend to, I'll speed read without really knowing how to speed read, and therefore screw up a lot of times because I'm speed reading. But it's not something that I trained myself to do. It's just what happens now. Like, it's just how my eye works or something. I don't really know, but I won't read the entire word and look at each letter in it or whatever. I'll look at the first letters, the last letters, and think of the sentence structure and what's going on in it, and I'll fill in whatever word it is that I think it is. And then, like, little word to, at, that, this, that, filler words, I'll just fill them in according to what I think, or maybe once in a while I'll actually read them, but skipping over those. And then kind of reading 2 lines at a time, and then I'll because I'm not trained for it, I'm just doing it naturally, I'll fuck up and jump the 2 lines. And but the other part of it is learning English. When they said, here's what all the letters sound like, sorry. And then, and that was all good. And then here's how they make words, and that's all good. And now here's when they don't sound like what they're supposed to sound like, or when they're silent, or when they just want to be something different, right? And so now they're all different. And all of a sudden, there's no logic. And my brain's just like, nope. And it puts up a wall, and I can't learn that. In order for me to learn something, I have to understand it fully. I have to take it apart and put it back together. So when I learn like a mathematical equation, A, B, C, I'll make it equal A, equal B, equal C, and be able to understand fully why it works, why that equation in those orders, no matter what numbers you put in, you're going to get slope, you know, and then I'll be able to remember it because it logically makes sense. But with English, doesn't make sense. It's like OUGH can make any sound that you want at all, just arbitrarily. It can be oof, enough, or it can be whatever sound it needs to be. Though, oh, what? It's just like a string of letters that make no sense in any word that you put them in. But you put them in a ton of words for no reason. Now, personally, I think that is to make people more susceptible to illogical information, right? So it's to train your mind to accept fallacies. They want you to accept that the world is a spinning ball flying through a vacuum with no barrier, holding pressure and oxygen with a magic force called gravity. That's due to maybe spinning, maybe the center, maybe this, maybe that. Who knows? And maybe the curvature of space-time. That was the newest one Neil deGrasse talked about. And so they need you to be able to absorb all of that illogical shit. And so they start you with the language that makes no sense. Like, that's how far back it goes. When they created English, they had in mind of you and I being dumbed down by the language. As they modified English, especially, they've dumbed it down and dumbed it down, taken it further and further from logic, so that you'll accept things that just don't make any logical sense more easily. So I say I was blessed with a mind that just can't absorb the logical. And it's not like it's something I consciously am doing. Or I'm even aware of. But you got your left brain and your right brain. And your right brain is your subconscious brain. And sorry. And so it will, everything's detailed to that side of the brain. It notices every detail about everything. And it doesn't deal in sarcasm. It doesn't deal with jokes. It doesn't deal, and none of that stuff. It's all logic. It's all serious, I guess, for lack of a better word. So in that, you program it throughout life. So if you say that you're broke all the time, then your right brain is going to say, okay, we want to be broke all the time. So then it comes to decision-making time. Okay? So payday comes around, you pay all your bills, and you got $100 left. And so, you could go to the movies, go on a date. You could go and, you know, get pizzas and shit, whatever, chill out, maybe rent a movie online and watch it, whatever. Um, there's all these different decisions that you can make with it. Um, and your right brain is going to interact with your left brain, and they come together in your third eye, and that's what your third eye is actually for. Is it communicates between the two sides so that you don't go insane. So because of that pineal gland is actually absorbing from both sides in order for you to make that decision, right? So that right side, if you're constantly telling it that you're broke, it's going to be like, okay, go get drunk, go on that date, go whatever, piss that money away, you know? Now, if you tell your mind that you're rich, or that you make good financial decisions, and say, I make good financial decisions, I make good choices, so I am rich because of those choices. I am rich. And then that programs that side of your brain so that when decision time comes, you got that extra $100. You know, this is that whole manifestation. Fuck, Jay, come on. So when people say, "Oh, I'm going to manifest a pot of gold" or whatever, well, this is how it's actually done. See, what they're doing is they're reprogramming that part of their brain to make better choices. And then when you got that $100, it's not a pot of gold, but maybe you go buy 2 silver coins, right? And that's the first chunk of your pot of gold, right? So every time that you make a better decision or choice, it keeps growing that, right? And then it's not like a leprechaun just kind of came and the gold started pouring out of the top of your coffee cup magically. But over a little bit of time, all of a sudden, you do have that, more gold or more coin than your cup can handle. And, your coffee cup starts to overflow. And see, it wasn't that you magically manifested something or found that leprechaun. It's that you reprogrammed your brain so that your choices, when the two pieces came together, logic and reason, your choice was sound, and your mind made that better choice much easier, right? Because your left brain, logic, it's easy to say, okay, well, I could save this money and I could not save this money, and what am I going to do? Wish wash, blah, blah, blah. It's the other side of the brain that goes, that's what we're going to do. It already knows. As soon as you had that money there, if you've programmed to waste and that a poor mindset, then it's going to get rid of that money. You're going to spend it no matter what. It's just going to piss away out of your wallet, burn a hole in your pocket. That's the expression. So gone. But if you set yourself up with a rich mindset or a saving mindset and a sound logical decision-making process, then you're not going to spend that. even if the other side of your brain is like, I deserve it, or I, this, that, the other, it's going to be super hard for you to make the choice to spend that on some frivolous thing, even if it's of a sound investment. Um, if you're buying new tools for your trade, see, my carpenter always said buying tools is never a waste. It's never wasting money because I'll make back the money that I'll save in time by owning those tools or whatever. So it's never a waste of money to upgrade your equipment. So so you're not wasting when you're making those sound decisions of investing in yourself. But it's still going to be hard to do that, in that your this side of your brain is going to make you think through and logically explain to it how this isn't a waste. You get that? And so that's what actual manifestation is. You cannot manifest winning the lottery or whatever. It just doesn't work like that. And, when you watch the people who have, I was watching a young lady, and she was actually selling manifesting techniques to people, and ended up getting really wealthy doing it. And her message was selling. And then she was sitting down with a financial advisor because she was so broke that I forget what she was making. It was a ton of money, like 20,000 a month or something. And she was like going on about being broke, fucking flat broke, and not just flat broke, way in debt, couple credit cards maxed right out. And the problem was she was still in a broke mindset, or and then got rich, and just had no responsibility with the money. So she was just buying whatever came at a whim constantly, and eating out for every meal. And her excuse for it was that she said, "Oh, it saves me so much time, so I can put more into my work." And Buddy was like, "Well, how many hours a day do you have to work in order to do your YouTube page or whatever?" And she was like, "Oh, it's about 5 hours a day." What the fuck? You got lots of time, man. Most people got to work at least 8 hours a day and then travel on top of that. You get to just stay at home and you're only doing 5 hours a day. You got all kinds of time to cook. You could make a whole separate channel about what you cook every day and monetize that to see if you could, tweak yourself up. Anyway, ridiculous. But it's how you're programmed, which gets us back to the school system, that programs you and brainwashes you as a child, where even their questions are brainwashing, in that they'll say, for your homework for tonight, kids, you got to write a essay or whatever on how you think the Big Bang happened to create everything in the universe. Well, what if I don't think the Big Bang happened? Am I not allowed to think that the Big Bang didn't happen? Because it's just a theory, right? And then if that kid was to go to school the next day and say, I don't think the Big Bang happened, and here's why, that there's laws of physics that apply to everything within the universe. And by definition, the universe is a closed system and run by those laws. And the laws of an explosion are that all the debris will be spinning in the same direction, getting further from the source, or every piece will even be evenly distributed from each other. As they get further from the source, they will get further from each other until they meet resistance. So everything in the universe should be evenly distributed. Every planet, every sun, every star, everything should be evenly spaced, and they should be getting further apart from one another, and they should all be spinning in the same direction. And when we look at the universe, we do not observe that. We have vast empty regions of space with small clusters of planets and stars that have moons and things spinning in different directions. And then we find entire galaxies that spin in the opposite direction. And so, therefore, an explosion could not have created our universe. So, your theory is debunked, and that kid would fail. That's just how it is. Doesn't matter if your answer is factual. It's you have to answer what you were taught. You cannot answer the question right. You need to answer the question accordingly to what we taught you. And that isn't teaching people anything. That's control at the fundamental level of your fucking mind. And then once it's programmed to see everything that way and to think of everything that way, it's hard to break it, just like it's hard to break a poor mindset. And you won't see it. Just like you wouldn't see a poor mindset. You wouldn't realize that by joking about that or saying that all the time, complaining all the time, that you're actually putting that in. It's like listening to music. If you listen to depressing grunge music like Kurt Cobain, your suicide chances are going to go through the fucking roof. Right? So all these white guys killing themselves, well, look at the music that they're listening to and singing. The words that they say all the time. Right? Your words are spells. So you can't just say anything. You got to be careful about what you're saying and what you're saying to your mind. So when you're singing a song, like a rap song, say, and it's all hoes and bitches and sluts and thugs and robbing and shooting people and gangster and tough guy, all the decisions you're going to make are going to be that shit. They're all going to be ratchet, right? That's how we've gotten this generation of degenerate young ladies. They're listening and dancing to this music. I'm in love with a stripper and all that kind of shit constantly, right? brought up on it from little kids, right? Because they were listening to their moms listening to it. A lot of the girls nowadays. So they got this fucked up mindset, just like most of the men do. Just different fucked up mindsets, right? All depending on that genre of music in which you choose. So good to listen to music that praises God. And if your song doesn't, and you really like love the song, but the lyrics are kind of negative, change them. When you're singing it, change a few words so that what you're saying isn't what the fucking song's saying. So what you say to your brain isn't that negative shit. You're saying positive shit, but you're still enjoying your music that you like, and you're still getting to sing and play and whatever. Um, and be super careful. It's important to them that they control music. That's why they killed Tupac. He was fine all the way through his career until he started to change what he was singing about. You know, Dear Mama, and Only God Can Judge Me, and all these other songs that had this beautiful message and said true things. You know, where he talks about, they say it's the white man I should fear, but it's my own kind doing all the killing here. But I can't lie. Ain't no love for the other side, right? And jealousy inside. I can't remember, but he's saying that, yeah, there's, and then he goes on just after that. He goes on about George Bush and whoever he was running against, and and says, you know, you're not for me either, right? So he's not only is the white man not for me, and not to be fully trusted or whatever, but it's the George Bush, the top white man, that's the main problem. And, you know, the average white guy ain't killing me. It's my own people that are killing me. And we're killing ourselves. We're killing each other. And we need to stop this, you know? And he was trying to get that message out through lyrics and, you know, and even the uh, scandalous bitches or whatever that he went on about, right? You can talk about some scandalous hoes. Sure you can. Drop that shit like this here. I met you through my homie, now you act like you don't know me. So disappointed because, baby, that shit was so phony. It's not phony to see the loving for my closest homie. With the page on my arm, baby, you was all up on me. And then he sings all about what the modern woman has become, what that problem led to of, again, negative music to our young girls that led into them being not ladies anymore. And no hate to you though, girls. Like there's a lot of ladies out there still, just like there's a lot of gentlemen, but there's a ton of assholes and a ton of bitches. That are doing horrible things. Buddy going on about his 7 babies with 7 baby mamas and saying, you know, talking shit about, well, all the other girls that I got pregnant had abortions. Why wouldn't these girls or whatever? And it's like, dude, what kind of a degenerate are you that you're out there getting that many women pregnant? What the fuck is wrong with your brain? How do you? And that again is programming. He listening to all that hoe music about being the top dog. He's got to sleep with all these women. He's singing that shit to himself, programming that mind, making all these bad choices, bad decisions, bad fucking, and then he's going to have to live with those choices eventually. Not that any of us are fucking perfect, but what the fuck, right? So, anyways, they need the music to control, especially the younger people. And they got the schooling and all this stuff, and they kind of program that in. But the rebellious young people, like myself, who just wouldn't take that shit in, or for whatever reasons, um, they need a different way to program those kids, right? If you reject school for whatever reason, even if it's just a rejection of authority, um, then they'll get you with music and still program your mind. And if you don't listen to the, well, they got television shows. Fucking Lisa Simpson. Look at that. That is the Greta Thunberg. That's where she came from. You know, that's that programming is what led to Greta Thunberg existing. And nothing she says is right. All that propaganda shit that Lisa talks about on that show, it's like 85% bullshit. Climate change and all this other fucking shit that she's so dramatic about. Bullshit. Um, Ridiculous. But we're all just controlled so easily. And now with the Trump stuff, everybody's so controlled, so brainwashed that, like I was saying, they need, I don't know if because I did this video twice, I'm not sure if I said it earlier or not. They need to hear it from the news in order for it to be factual. So when we said don't get vaccinated, they said that's a conspiracy, you're crazy, you're nuts, this, that, the other. Now it comes out that most people shouldn't have really gotten vaccinated. And unless you were vulnerable, this, that, the other. And even then, my friend was at the hospital recently going through some heart issues and ended up getting COVID while in the hospital. And the day that he tested positive for COVID, they sent him home, not quarantining him or doing any big COVID-y shit. It's just, you get a cold, go home. You'll get better. Don't worry about it. Lives in a rooming house, shared bathroom. They know that. They don't care. It's fine. Downstairs is a restaurant and store. Doesn't matter, right? There was nothing to be feared. But until the news says that, they won't believe it. And it's a huge part of our population. And it's not just the news, but like the Big Bang Theory or the late shows or the View or the whatever, right? They need to hear it from some authority figure. It cannot be true if it's just coming from you and I, which is ridiculous. Especially knowing, like, for generations, we've been complaining about the people who are supposed to be our servants that have been playing authority in our lives, right? So politicians are supposed to be civil servants, but they play authority. Everybody bitches about it and then waits for their word on what to think or do about it, or for anybody to fix it. Where's the sense in that? There's no logic. But again, you were raised to not use logic. Put logic aside and use your knowledge that we gave you. Put that knowledge first before logic. Logic doesn't matter. Water is always level? No, it's not. That's logical. We taught you that water can bend. So water bends. I know in the world, it never bends, and we use it for level, and it's level for miles. Doesn't matter how far you go, it's always level. So, and like, if I was to put a laser here and shoot my laser line, say 10 miles, not even, let's say 1 mile, just 1 mile. So I shoot my laser line over, and then I put another stake in the ground, right? I put 2 stakes in the ground at that, right at the laser level, and then I run a string over water, right? You're meant to think that that string is going to have 8 inches less space against the water in the center, or 4 inches less in the center than it does on the ends, because it's curved up. Would it be curved up from your spot, right? So that just doesn't make any logical sense. But because you're taught to not use logic and reason, but instead to use the given knowledge in order to address a problem, so then you run into just more problems. But that knowledge can answer anything, right? So let's say that I was some high IQ math guy, and I was highly trained in math, engineer, whatever, and 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 I was corrupt as fuck. And somebody came to me and said, I need you to make an equation that balances that. And I'm going to attribute it to gravity. I could easily make that equation. It doesn't have to attribute to anything, because there is no experimentation for gravity. They use buoyancy and density and call it gravity. Or they'll use the electromagnetic field and attribute it to gravity. And for the longest time, they denied the existence of the electromagnetic sphere and field that we live in. They just denied it. Said it's all gravity. But now that the Flat Earth Society proved that there's that exists, they had to confront it. So they've come out and they said gravity is 10 to the 26th times weaker than the electromagnetic forces on Earth. 10 to the 26th power weaker. That's trillions of times weaker. So that's a non-existent force. The electromagnetic sphere is weak enough that a bird can fly. That when I can get static and my hair can stand up, even without static, right? Just being messed up, I can make it stand in different ways, and it doesn't get pulled right down immediately. I can spray water on the wall, and the drops will stay there They don't get pulled right down fast and hard immediately. They'll just stay there unless they get big, right? All that just proves right there. There's no, that if something is 10 to the 26 times weaker than that it doesn't exist. Because that already has weakness. That can already be, I can jump, right? I can already fight that force. So therefore, something a trillion times weaker, right? It's like I can fight a 10-year-old kid. What's a trillion times weaker than a 10-year-old kid? A trillion times. Just 1 trillion. Weaker. That's such a huge number and such a vast difference that it's uncomputable in your mind. 100 times weaker would be an embryo. Not even. 10 times weaker would be an embryo. 100 times weaker would be a sperm. If that, right? Put it in the air for a few hours. Like I was saying, I was talking about, gravity as opposed to the electromagnetic force, and that it's 10 to the 26th power weaker. They openly admit that. So 10 to the 26th power, that's 10 and 26 more zeros, right? So, and like I was saying, the electromagnetic force has a certain amount of weakness to it as well, where a couple hairs can stand against it. There we go. Easily. But gravity is trillions of times weaker than that. So the electromagnetic sphere would be the power of, say, a 10-year-old. Because, like, I can jump. A bird can fly. Shit like that. Like, it's not that strong. And so then if you were to think about 100 times weaker, 20 times weaker than a 10-year-old, you're getting into nothing. So a trillion times weaker? You'd have to believe in evolution at that point and de-evolve the human down to a single cell fucking organism in order to even start to get that weak. So it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't exist. But because you're conditioned to trust the knowledge you were given without using experiment or logic or reason or accountability or anything, you just trust that knowledge, and that the authority source giving it to you wouldn't allow it to be a mistake, right? And they don't, because they openly say, oh, well, it's a theory. But then they teach it like it's science. Because there's no experimentation behind gravity that is actually provable of being of gravity, right? There's density, buoyancy, and then there's the electromagnetic pole, but there's nothing that proves gravity. And actually, when NASA dropped a feather and a bowling ball inside of a vacuum, they hit the ground at the same speed and velocity because there was no air resistance to slow the feather down, which proves that um, that its density and buoyancy and gravity has nothing to do with it. But you're taught all this shit. Glad I'm blessed in one way to not know it, but in another way, life would be a lot easier in some aspects if I could just accept all this fallacy, all this illogical crap, because, you know, you could be in a imagination land, basically. Just try to ignore everything. I don't know. It's what my ex does. That's her strategy. Is she, like, if we get talking and the conversation gets too deep politically or scientifically or religiously, she shuts down and says, I don't want to know that stuff. I'm happy the way that I am, the way that my life is. I don't want to know anymore. I want to know about our politics. I don't want to know about the evils, and just want to blindly believe what I'm told on television. I want to think that that's all true and righteous, and will actually openly admit that. At least a lot of people won't admit that they're shutting down the truth. You know, say things like she's got enough on her plate, already got to stress out about looking after this, that, the other. I don't need to stress out about that. There's nothing I can do about it. So I don't want to know about it. I just don't understand that way of thinking. If I can know something, I want to know it. If I can see the reason behind shit, I want to be able to see that. I don't know. And information like that, I find things fascinating sometimes and like to be able to understand things. It's like the learning math thing where I break the thing down and try to understand all of the equation and why it works. It's the same thing when I build houses. You know, it's fascinating for me to learn all the structure. And I've actually sat down over the years a few times because I started out as a framer and then moved through the fields and became many other things, right? But stopped framing for the most part. You know, I would do putting new windows and have to fix some framing or whatever, put an extension on a house and frame that, you know, but I wasn't framing an entire house right from nothing. And so I've sat down a few times and just tried to see if I could remember every step in order through my mind and just try to build a house all in order and get everything right and the soffit lines and all that stuff when you're putting on the trusses and the straightness of the walls, and the heights and the dimensions and the windows and the doors and the frame and everything. And just try to run through it all and process it all and build a house in my mind. Just to keep my skills fresh, you know, to see if I could, if had to, I could still, and not fuck things up or forget some step and be like, shit, you know, I've had to go and fix other guys' stuff where they've done those little mistakes and kind of like got fired halfway through jobs. And then I got to go in and try to meld things together just to try to make it look finished, even though it's improperly framed. At least I fixed the structure, make it sound and strong, and then try to blend everything together to make it look good on the outside. Uh, it's not simple a lot of the times, but whatever. Anyway, so it's fascinating to me how brainwashed we all are, how long it took to unbrainwash myself from the globe and that way of thinking, and like thinking space and planet, looking at the sky and thinking space, or, Star Trek, as opposed to seeing the top of the dome that is our snow globe or whatever, right? Like it's so much more beautiful than space and all that shit when it's that unique Earth, a little at heavens right there, you know, just right on top, plunk. So I don't know. It's just beautiful once you're able to look at it and see it for what it is. And it's still hard sometimes because, well, as much as we've figured out over the years through experimentation as the flat earthers or whatever, um, there's limits to our experiments that we can do. We can look to other experiments that our government and things have done and show the fallacies within those and or truth within those. Like Operation Fishbowl was super fascinating and really neat and la-di-da, whatever. And then all of the rest of that century went by and nobody shot any rockets straight up. All of NASA's rockets, if you watch the trajectory, they curve like that and bugger off out to sea. And then Elon Musk comes on the page and he takes over NASA. And just last year, his rocket was the first one since Operation Fishbowl, it's 1964, 1962, something like that, was the first one to go straight up. And you could see it, like, whoosh, went straight up, boom, and exploded off of something. And then he said, well, it was unmanned, and we knew it was going to explode. That was part of the plan. Really? What's the plan, Elon? You're knocking on heaven's door. Why? After all these years, they in Operation Fishbowl, they shot nuclear bombs up there, blew them up against the sky, and you could see the way the explosions went. They arced against something. Never heard it. Whatever it was, they didn't fucking scratch it. Well, whatever it was, the firmament is what it is, right? So they're blasting these missiles at it and done nothing. So they gave up on it, and basically 100 years went by. Probably 85, 89 years went by, something like that. No, 60 years went by, whatever it was. Anyway, nobody shoots at it again. And they lie to you, and they shoot rockets out into the ocean and tell you that they're doing all this wonderful stuff and shoot all this CGI shit and make all these Photoshop pictures and tell you all this stuff about fucking satellites and fucking space stations and all this shit flying around. Um, but nobody's went straight up until Elon. And when he did, he hit something. Obviously, look it up. And it fucking exploded. And he says, I wanted to do that. I wonder what the plan is. I know CERN is trying to go down or through. So Elon's meant to go up through. He's talking about Mars. Well, Mars is one of the fallen angels who, all the planets, who were put in the sky and they're trapped there. It's their punishment, right? The Nephilim are trapped here in spirit form. So that's all your ghosts and phantoms and shit like that people see. It's all the Nephilim. And then you have your fallen angels. Some of them might be free on Earth still, I'm not sure. But the leaders were buried deep in the ground, CERN, or were trapped in the stars, the planets, the wandering stars. So them wanting all this interest in Mars, forget which leader of Satan's army that is, or if it's Satan himself, but that's what it represents. That's who it is. It's not an angel or a good thing. So, anyways, I think I'm gonna end right now. I think that'd be smart, and just say God bless. Hope you like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And if not, I don't really care. I hope you learned something. Hope you took a little bit of something from this. I hope I was at least entertaining enough for you to stay to the end. If you did, thank you. And yeah, have a great, wonderful day. God bless.